All right, year 12, quick video here unpacking Macbeth's famous "Is This a Dagger" soliloquy. Um, this, as we know from having a quick chat about it, very significant soliloquy in the scheme of the play as a whole, really showing Macbeth's state of mind before the murder of Duncan and what's going through his head. My suggestion to you is to read this soliloquy again before you watch the rest of this video. So have a quick pause and come back to it once you have read it. As you can see, I've already pre-filled in the soliloquy, the syllable count for each of the lines in this soliloquy, which we'll unpack as we go through. But we're going to break it up into little sections and go through and annotate and unpack it from there. We're going to go through the first 7 or 8 lines to begin with. Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I still see thee. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight, or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain? I see thee yet in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Straight away, a couple of things stand out to us from the opening of this soliloquy. I'm just going to highlight everywhere where Macbeth has personified the dagger. Okay, so he refers to the dagger as he's personifying the dagger. This is a very significant tactic and feature of this soliloquy, which is really highlighting the power that the dagger holds over Macbeth. Okay, so we have the personification of the dagger. Power. So the power that the dagger holds over Macbeth. The opening of this soliloquy kind of highlights to us the supernatural power. So the personifying of the dagger, it's almost as if Macbeth is not completing this or contemplating the murder of this himself, that there's some hold over him, that something is forcing him or has power over him, and that's the supernatural aspect of it. Macbeth, let's further illustrated here where he says, come, let me. So he's asking, Macbeth is asking for permission to hold the dagger, which opens up questions for us as to who is in control at this point of the play. Is Macbeth really in control, or is this dagger, which he is visualizing, brought on by the supernatural forces, is it having power over him? I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. So Macbeth here has quite a bit of doubt. Okay, he has a bit of doubt. He tries to grab it, but he's not able to. Okay, he tries to reach out, tries to grab the dagger, but he's not able to grasp it. He's not able to hold it. Which leads on to the next line: art thou not fatal vision? Okay, so this fatal vision, it's foreshadowing the murder, which is that will happen. Okay, we're at no doubt here that the murder of Macbeth, the murder of Duncan, is going to happen. The second part of this opening section, there's a little bit of a change. It's referred to as a dagger of the mind by Macbeth, a false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain. So we get a different interpretation, a different perspective here from Macbeth. And he then considers, is he just hallucinating? And if he is hallucinating, it highlights to us that Macbeth is really undergoing some kind of psychological strain at this point of the soliloquy. So psychological strain, psychological damage. What's bringing that on? Is he sick? Has he got a fever? Is he just gone completely mad? These are questions which stand out to us at this part of the play. And then this line here, he actually draws out a dagger himself. He can't grasp the one that he's seeing, but he pulls out his own dagger. One other significant thing about these opening lines are these three rhetorical questions, which again illustrate Macbeth's unsure nature at this point. Okay, he's confused, he's a little bit mad, a little bit crazy. He's psychologically, the thought of murdering Duncan is playing severe tricks on his mind. Okay, at first he believes it's real, but then he questions as to whether it is just a hallucination. Okay, so we've got links between those opening few lines. Believes it's real because of the supernatural, but then he considers it just to be a hallucination. And this palpable is where palpable means real. I see the yet in form as palpable, or in form as real, as this which I now draw, and he draws out his own dagger into his hand. The syllable count here, which we're looking at, we can see quite consistent: 11, 12, 10, 10, 10, 11, 9, 10. And then we've got this 6 here, which is the moment on which Macbeth pulls out his own dagger. Very short and very concise, pulls out his own dagger to illustrate the reality of the situation that he is in. The next few lines. Thou marshalled me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses, or else worth all the rest I see thee still, and on thy blade and dungeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. So we're going to stop there for a second. Again, we have the personification of the dagger. Thou marshals me the way that I was going. So the dagger is directing him to Duncan's room. Again, we've got some personification. Which is leading him to Duncan's room. And such an instrument I was to use. I was going to be using this dagger to kill you. Again, he's confused. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses. So it's his eyes, this hallucination leads him to questioning his sight. It's making a fool of him, it's making a fool of his other senses. Okay, he can't smell, his eyes are overpowering everything else. Okay, and they're fooling him and his other senses. Or else worth all the rest I see thee still, he's still seeing it. And as he sees it, on thy blade and dungeons are dungeon gouts of blood. So this symbolism of blood, so dungeon means handle. We have the symbolism of blood here. Before Macbeth even commits the murder of Duncan, he's feeling guilty. Okay, he can see the blood, gouts of blood, elements of blood on the dagger which he is seeing in front of him. Okay, so he is he's guilty before he even commits the murder of Duncan, which was not so before. It wasn't there before, but there it is now. And again, this is foreshadowing the murder. It is this bloody business. This word business. When we think of business, we think of a job, we think of a duty. Lady Macbeth referred to it as a business earlier in the scene. Okay, so she said there's business, there's business, there's business. It's Macbeth who's not using this term business. Previous to this, he was unsure, but at this point, when he says business, he sees it as his job. He sees it as his duty to kill Duncan, to carry out the prophecies of the witches. So a very significant word, and again, bloody. He refers to it as a bloody job, a bloody duty. It's something that he has to do. It's impacting what he sees, and how he sets out to do it, or how he sees it even. Okay, so it's impact what he sees and how he sees it. So he sees the gouts of blood. It's now, this is a business, this is something that I have to do. Thus to mine eyes. Next view. Now over the one half world, nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates. Pale hectates offerings and withered murder, alarmed by her sentinel the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace. With Tarquin's ravishing strides towards his design moves like a ghost. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabouts, and take the present horror from the time which now suits with it. So we're going to stop there. Okay, these few lines here. Now over the one half world. Half world is the northern hemisphere. Obviously where Scotland is. So the northern hemisphere, and it comes back to this idea of nature. Nature seems dead. Now we know that nature is very symbolic and resonates throughout the whole of the play, right from the moment where Lady Macbeth decides to kill Duncan for the first time, well maybe not the first time, but when Duncan was arriving at her castle, right up to the actual murder. We have this animal imagery associated with all of those scenes. But again, here nature seems dead. These three lines here, nature seems dead because of the supernatural. Okay, so the supernatural is starting to take a real hold here. Nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. So this idea of witchcraft celebrates. Leading to the supernatural, pale Hecate's offering. Hecate is the goddess of moon and witchcraft, of the moon and witchcraft. So she's celebrating. Okay, so Hecate is celebrating. So this idea of nature seems dead is because of all of these supernatural elements that are occurring. And withered murder. This is the personification of murder coming up, which is very significant. It shows Macbeth's decline, I suppose, that he's now also not just personifying the dagger, but now he's personifying murder. This little bit here, wicked dreams abuse, so that's Macbeth's sleep. Okay, so Macbeth, sleep versus being awake, and we know after the murder of Duncan that he says Macbeth is murdered sleep. So we know that he is going to struggle after the murder of Duncan, and he's saying here that nature seems dead, wicked dreams abuse. So it's almost as if he's foreshadowing here that he's not going to sleep. And that he's going to be horrified from the murder of Duncan, which he is after it happens. And then the personification of murder, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf. So here we have his, so this is the personification of murder, who howls his watch. Thus, with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides towards his design, moves like a ghost. Tarquin is the Roman tyrant who raped his friend's wife. So murder is personified as Tarquin. And moves towards his design, he moves like a ghost. Okay, so murder is able to move like a ghost, so we got that simile in there to show that murder can be very, very quiet. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps. So now Macbeth is talking to earth. He's saying, I want to be like Tarquin. Don't hear me. I don't want anybody to know what I'm about to do. Okay, so he's talking, he's speaking to earth. He's asking earth to not hear his steps or personifying earth again. Which way they walk, for fear the very stones prate of my walkabout. So prate means telltales. So he wants to be like Tarquin. He wants to be like murder, which is personified as Tarquin. This is what Macbeth wants for himself. He wants to be able to move like a ghost, move like Tarquin, and for earth and for everybody around him not to hear his steps, which way he walks, because he doesn't want obviously anybody to find out, and take the present horror from the time which now suits it. These lines here you will see are all 10 10 10 10, so these are all monosyllables as Macbeth really kind of decides on his course of action, he starts to speak in these monosyllables. Okay, he starts to speak in iambic pentameter, but the monosymbolic element of it shows the surety that he has, or the mindset that he's just about to implement, and that he's starting to get very clear about where he's going to go. And that is the murder of Duncan. Whilst I threat, he lives. So once I think about this, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds, too cold breath gives. So we've got this rhyming couplet here. The more I talk about it, the more breath he has. So the words to the heat of deeds, too cold breath gives. So he says, talking cools action. I need to stop talking. I need to go and actually do it. I go and it is done. The bell invites me. So remember earlier, just before this soliloquy happened, Macbeth was told that Lady Macbeth is going to ring a bell, and that's going to tell him that it's time to do it. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. So knell is a funeral bell. Every time Macbeth kills somebody or orders the murder of somebody, he speaks in a rhyming couplet, just like the witches earlier in the play. Or anytime the witches speak, they also speak in rhyming couplets. So a funeral bell is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. It's not for Macbeth to decide where he goes, but again, it foreshadows the death of Duncan, which was inevitable. Okay, so summary: supernatural to begin with. He's very unsure about the dagger that he sees. Thinks it's the supernatural working. He personifies it, and he considers whether it is a hallucination because of his psychological damage, psychological strain at the thought of murdering King Duncan. Back to the dagger, personifying it again, leading him to it. He sees the blood on the dagger, so he's got guilt, which again is foreshadowing not just the murder of Duncan, but also foreshadowing how he's going to feel after the murder of Duncan. He refers to it as a business, this bloody business. So this idea of blood is starting to become present here, and throughout the rest of the play, we know that the color red contrasts heavily against that the blackness of the night and the blackness of witchcraft and the supernatural. He personifies murder here, and compares it to Tarquin. He wants to be like Tarquin. He wants to be like a Roman tyrant who raped his friend's wife. He wants to be quiet like him. He wants to move like a ghost so that he can go and kill Duncan. So by the end of this soliloquy, we can see it's a bit irregular syllable count up here. But down here, he starts to get very, very accurate with his monosyllables and his iambic pentameter, leading into this rhyming couplet at the end, where he ultimately decides to go and kill Lady Duncan.